Rusty, the logistics specialist on the Denari ship Nagala, was going to get good and drunk tonight. Nagala had just finished a series of cargo runs, and now Rusty wanted nothing more than to throw some beers back with his crew. His crew consisted of 5 other humans, 3 of the crab-like Denari, 2 space otter clerks and 2 arachnid plorkant clerks, and a few bear-like ursods. Rusty led his eclectic group down the street until stopping at a human tavern. The aliens in the group looked at each other uncomfortably. Humans had a well-deserved reputation for bad behavior, and the aliens were concerned that this outing could result in injury or criminal prosecution. However, Rusty had given them his reassurances. Just as Rusty was reaching for the door, an otter charged into him. The otter fell backwards with a cry. The otters with Rusty immediately rushed to assist him while Rusty watched the snarling alien running towards them. It was an insectoid skrizit. Every human knew what a skrizit was, and hated them. The bugs had launched an unprovoked bombardment in Earth's southern hemisphere. Earth had retaliated by destroying the ecology of the skrizit world. While some thought it was overkill, others like Rusty thought it wasn't enough. The alien was shouting in its buzzing voice. "Stop! Return my property!" Skrizits were also slave traders, and rumors abounded of them sacrificing slaves in religious rituals. Interplanetary news had buzzed for weeks about a group of human slaves who had mutined on a slaver ship. The Skrizits had attempted to scuttle the ship by sending it on a suicide course to an aquatic world, drowning all the humans. It didn't work, thank God. A pregnant woman stopped it by killing their queen, but had perished in her selfless act. This bug had just made the biggest mistake of its useless life. Rusty was usually easygoing, but there were times that you could see that he was a battle-hardened Marine veteran. Rusty planted himself solidly, feet apart, fists clenched, reeking combat pheromones. The aliens in Rusty's group noticed that the other humans had also assumed an aggressive posture. Rusty glanced at the otter who had collided with him. The poor creature looked terrified. Rusty growled at the skrizit, "You don't own anything here. Turn around and walk away while you can." The skrizit gave a series of low shrieks. "Do not trifle with me, primate. You will return my slave now." Rusty and the other humans took a step forward. "Slavery is illegal. Go lick shit." The skrizit made an angry buzzing noise, and retorted, "Maybe on your primitive world, but not here. Give me my slave or I will have you arrested for theft." The frightened otter was on his feet again. Rusty ordered over his shoulder, "Get him inside." He stepped closer to the skrizit, now in a fighter's stance. One human opened the door while the others also stepped forward, so the skrizit was completely blocked. The otters and plorkants scurried inside. Rusty told the skrizit coldly, "You're right, slavery is illegal on Earth, and it's Earth in there. You want him back." Rusty leaned towards the skrizit and growled through gritted teeth. "Go in there and get him." "I dare you." Moden asked, "What is whiskey work?" At that point, a couple of humans from an adjoining table leaned over. A big, burly, disheveled-looking specimen with shaggy red hair and tattoos asked, "Did I hear whiskey work?" Rusty nodded. "Seems there's a skrizit who's got a bunch of slaves that need liberating. I'm thinking this is a good night for some shenanigans." The other human knocked on his table with his tankard and asked his crew, "Anybody up for some shenanigans? There's skrizits that need to be taught a lesson." Rusty explained to his crew, "In the Marines, whiskey work is when we would need to do extra maintenance and repairs on our equipment. We also had a cookout and some beers. Sometimes, before the night was out, there were shenanigans. I can neither confirm nor deny incidents of theft, kidnapping, mild vandalism, a few fights, and other fun and games." As Rusty explained this to his crew, word was spreading throughout the tavern. Several veterans, especially Marines, came forward, asking to join in. Rusty told them, "You need to be aware, what we're doing is pretty illegal. There's probably going to be fighting. There's a good chance people will get hurt, and maybe get tossed in jail." The first human, Big Red, responded, "You don't have to sell me, I already said I'm in." Several other humans laughed raucously and toasted, draining their drinks. Plans were made while the aliens grew more alarmed. Back on the Nagala, Rusty spoke to his team. I just want you to know, what I am planning is illegal and dangerous. I'm not asking any of you to take part in this. It's fine if you don't want to. If anyone asks, I'll tell them you knew nothing about it. His team all looked at each other, then they started to respond. Nelv spoke up first. Oxide Eyes, while we certainly appreciate the moral position you take due to your culture, we have families on the ship. We will not be partaking. However, we will also not report this incident to authorities. When you return to the ship, we will assist you. Rusty nodded. That's fair. Modin spoke for the Ursods. While slavery is legal in our culture, we have heard about the Skrizit abuses. We have listened to Brev's story, and the Skrizit are clearly guilty of crimes against sapients. We are willing to get the slaves to safety, where they may receive medical treatment and report the situation to proper authorities. Rusty nodded again. I appreciate your help. Nigel spoke up for the humans. Like you even have to ask, mate. We'd love to give them bugs, what for? Rusty chuckled. Somehow I knew that was going to be the answer. He turned to the otters. I know that your people are pacifist and don't like to get involved in things like this. Like I said, whatever you decide is fine. Booley, the daughter of Purg, the ship's information specialist, waddled forward with Brev. She spoke with a note of resolve that you rarely heard from an otter. The otters will stand behind you. Humans have been good allies to our people, as you have been to us. We will do what we can to assist you. Rusty looked to the Denari team members. What do you say? Duren spoke for the Denarii. We are still discussing the matter with Captain Vioon and have not yet reached consensus. Until consensus is reached, we will not take action. The ship will follow the laws, but without consensus, we will not attempt anything that is a potential violation of the laws. Rusty asked. Does Vioon realize that we are planning to leave right away, whether or not there is a consensus? Duren replied yes. Because a consensus has not been reached, the Denari will neither assist nor hinder you until there is consensus. Rusty nodded. The ship was Denari, and the crab-like Denari favored democratic decision-making. Denari leaders weren't bosses so much as facilitators who guided groups to reach consensus. Curiously, Denari found the human version of democracy, majority rule, to be distasteful. To them, majority rule meant willfully ignoring the legitimate concerns of some group members. Rusty walked over to a compartment in the main cargo bay and opened it. Inside there were a lot of oversized weapons with mounting brackets, obviously meant to be attached to the power loaders. Let's mount up. Everyone looked at the weapons in surprise, while the humans also had delight in their faces. Nigel spoke up. Would you look at these beauties? What's with all the hardware? Rusty shrugged. Once a Marine, always a Marine. The human woman, Maria, looked at the weapons askance. While I definitely want to help, are you sure that giving us these weapons is a good idea? Rusty nodded. Absolutely. You know all those unnecessary training drills? Those drills were teaching you to operate these weapons in case we ever got boarded by pirates. Power loaders are made by the same manufacturer as military power suits. You didn't know, but all of you could run a military power suit reasonably well. Maria responded, if it's all the same, I don't want any weapons. Rescuing slaves is one thing, but I'm not comfortable with the weapons. Rusty nodded, that's fine. He told the others, anyone who doesn't want weapons, just say so. The human males were eager to split up Maria's share of the weapons. The Ursods did take stun grenades, and the otters surprisingly took non-lethal crowd control weapons from the ship's armory. There were actually several otters from other ship's departments who had joined the raiding party. Booley explained, while our people don't like violence, we can't stand by. I have also spoken with Grell and Podra. Grell will be monitoring communications and Podra is getting the medical facility ready. One of the Ursods growled in vexation as Modin held out his massive paw. The other Ursoid handed him some currency while Modin grinned a sharp-fanged smile. That's just wrong, Rusty thought. There were quite a few legends about bears on Earth, but he couldn't recall any of them mentioning gambling addiction. If you walked in on a couple Ursods talking, it was a 50-50 chance there was a bet going. Rusty and crew were mounted up and ready to go. Rusty activated the control for the main cargo door, but it stayed shut. Rusty attempted to open it repeatedly, including bypassing regular controls. Finally, he got desperate. Nagala, open, Nagala, please open main cargo door. Nagala's feminine metallic voice replied, no security alert in progress. Unneeded equipment may be returned to storage and crew may resume normal duties. Rusty gritted his teeth. Nothing in the universe was more aggressively passive-aggressive than the ship's AI. Nagala. I don't have time or patience to argue with you. Open the damn door. Please. Just then, the intercom beeped. It was Sylvia. Great. Rusty thought. Now I have to deal with both of my nagging wives. Sylvia looked pissed, which seemed to be her usual mood these days. Rusty, you weren't serious about this nonsense. What is wrong with you? And what the hell is wrong with your stupid cat? I caught him pissing on the door again. He never shows up except to piss on something. Nagala's voice echoed in the cargo bay and Rusty's cabin. Logistics unit proper designation, Oxide Eyes. Sylvia snarled. Fuck off, Nagala. Rusty, I swear if you don't get your ass back here right now, I'm. The transmission cut off and the cargo bay door opened. Moden asked Rusty, are you sure she isn't pregnant? Ursoid females act like that during pregnancy. Rusty rolled his eyes. Human pregnancy doesn't last 5 years. Let's go before Nagala changes its mind. On the street, several roughnecks from the bar had gathered in assorted vehicles, and some in obsolete power suits. There were a couple buses with otters aboard. Rusty marveled at how quickly otters could pass on information. They had come to give medical care as needed. Big Red and a few others were in a refurbished black market assault vehicle. One of the bar roughnecks was a prior Marine who had zero reservations about using weapons, so he took over Maria's power loader and the others quickly attached weapons onto his unit. Beers and flasks were being passed around with the crowd getting rowdier. On the way to the Skrizit ship, a nondescript human joined them. He was tall and wiry, with graying hair and glasses. He approached Rusty. I heard about the party. He opened his shirt and revealed a gold tattoo in an alien language. I'm familiar with Skrizit slave ships. I can help. Rusty grinned, sure. The more the merrier. What's your name? The man shrugged, I would rather not say. Rusty snorted. We have to call you something. How about Bob? The man, Bob, nodded quietly. That's fine. At the Skrizit ship, Rusty and several others were ready for a frontal assault. Bob told Rusty, give me 9 minutes to get into position, then start. Nobody goes onto the ship until then. Rusty told him, I'm not sure I can hold this crowd that long. Bob looked at him coldly, then you will be responsible for any unnecessary deaths. Something about Bob made Rusty's skin crawl. He nodded, and Bob quietly slipped away. Rusty summoned a few leaders and told them okay, we have to stall for 9 minutes, then it's go time. A few people looked at him quizzically. Rusty responded, that one guy, Bob, wanted a head start. Since he said he knows these ships, I figure he's got reasons. Big Red snorted Bob. That's what he's calling himself now? The crew looked at him questioningly. Just stay out of his way and don't ask. I met him before. It's best to ignore him. At the designated time, Rusty, the others in power loaders and power suits, and the assault vehicle all charged the Slava ship. Doors conveniently opened and closed for them. The refurbished assault vehicle played war music at full volume, causing sheer pandemonium by the Skrizit. In the confusion, many others on foot or in small vehicles entered through the cargo doors behind larger vehicles. Rusty's blood pumped hard and fast. The power loader didn't have the maneuverability of a power suit, but it was still formidable, especially with the attached weapons. He shot, bombed, and tore apart ship pieces. Sometimes it just felt good to smash shit. The swords threw around furniture, easily turning chairs and tables into missile weapons. Humans fought with improvised clubs. One reported that he had seen Bob assaulting an armed Skrizit, expertly dodging fire until he was within grabbing distance. Bob hadn't just incapacitated the bug, he had killed it with precise savagery using martial arts. The human told Rusty, "I hate Skrizit just as much as the next guy, but Bob, there's something not right about him. We need to keep an eye on him." Finally, they found the slave cargo holds. Bob was there, with a Skrizit in one hand, a dismembered Skrizit limb in the other hand, and splashed head to toe with yellow Skrizit blood. Bob was holding the limb so he could use it to tap in the large Skrizit multi-eye and snarling, "You have 10 seconds to open these holds. Other than that, you are of no use to me." This one was still screaming when I walked away with its appendage. The terrified Skrizit handed Bob a tech key and screeched 949Pi76Pi-1. Bob kicked the Skrizit and barked, "Get loss," then released him. The Skrizit fled. Rusty watched him leave. "Are you sure that's smart? What if he lied?" Bob entered the code onto the alien keypad. "I already beat the code out of another bug. If it was a lie, they wouldn't have given me the same answer." The door opened and a couple humans stepped in, followed by otters. There were a couple dozen creatures in there, and otter slaves rushed forward when they saw other otters. The otters reassured everyone that they were being rescued. There was some limited fighting along the way to 3 other cargo holds where more slaves were rescued. Rusty watched Bob in his gruesome work of fighting the Skrizit in hand-to appendage combat, noting the grim pleasure Bob experienced. There was really something off about that guy. Bob's fighting technique was extremely precise, causing maximum pain and damage. As the raiders were leading slaves to the buses outside, Bob selected 5 guys and went off. He told Rusty, "Don't wait for us." Warning sirens were going off all over the ship. Yellow alert lights changed to orange. The humans and swords covered the escaping slaves. Armed otters stood between the legs of swords and power loaders, providing good cover fire. Even though their weapons did very little damage, they hurt like hell if you got hit. Rusty and his team were right at the cargo doors when the alert lights went from orange to red, and the sirens became an ear-shattering screech. Rusty shouted over his speaker, "Everyone out. Now now now." He thought to himself, "That's not good. My tinnitus is going to be acting up for days." Rusty and his team, along with Big Red and the assault vehicle, provided cover while everyone loaded onto the buses and other vehicles. More Skrizit came pouring out of the ship, and some of them had armed vehicles also. Once everyone was loaded onto vehicles and was leaving, Rusty's team and Big Red's vehicle followed, occasionally providing cover fire against their pursuers. Rusty radioed the ship as it came into their sights. "Nagala, I'm coming in hot." He prayed the senior staff had reached consensus to help. As he got close to the ship, the stormproof mooring lines launched, establishing a clear visual perimeter outside the raiding party. The ship's engine roared to life in an emergency start sequence. Lights on the ship shone on a piece of the front hull where a United Earth flag unfurled. Loudspeakers around the ship announced in Nagala's metallic feminine voice, "Attention! Authorized personnel only. Unauthorized personnel shall be assumed to be hostile and dealt with." Rusty walked his power loader into the cargo bay. Grell was there to meet him. "Oxide Eyes, you are required on the bridge immediately." Rusty climbed out of his power loader. Everyone else was exiting their vehicles and otters were directing people and aliens to needed services. Now that the adrenaline was wearing off, Rusty felt a lot of bumps and bruises that were really going to hurt tomorrow. He nodded and sighed. "Yeah, Grell, I'll be right along." Rusty walked a little slower than usual. Grell took Rusty's massive meaty hand in his furry little paw and waddled with him, telling him of the events that had transpired on the ship in his absence. There was a great deal of disagreement, however. Brev was convincing a majority. Due to the hurried nature of the incidents, it was looking as though Vioon would have had to accept a majority instead of waiting for consensus. Captain Vioon was extremely irate about that. Father and I were monitoring local communications when an alert came up about a skirmish at the Skrizit ship. When we got your message, Nagala activated a protocol that was left in the archive by the previous AI. They had reached the door to the bridge and Grell turned to Rusty. Were you the previous captain? Was Nagala an Earth Force ship? Rusty thought about it and chuckled. Remind me to tell you about that after I've slept for a week. He shifted his shoulders uncomfortably. I'm getting too old for this. While Rusty debriefed the senior staff on what happened, local law enforcement arrived at the ship's marked perimeter. The Skrizit were angrily demanding that law enforcement should board the ship. The lead officer, who had dealt with humans and knew their reputation, wasn't about to assault the ship unless absolutely necessary, especially without reinforcements. Vioon was fit to be tied. While he was sympathetic to the slave situation, he hated having his hand claw forced. He was furious that he had been ready to rule in favor of simple majority over consensus, but Nagala beat him to it by activating the emergency protocol. 20 minutes later, Rusty, Vioon, Brev, and several other senior ship's officers stood just inside Nagala's perimeter while the angry Skrizit and local law enforcement officers stood outside the perimeter. I demand that their ship be impounded, the crew incarcerated, and our stolen slaves returned. Additionally, they have kidnapped our people. The captain of the Skrizit, Nijit, was buzzing and screeching, partly from outrage and partly from pain due to nasty wounds. Rusty snorted in derision. Slavery is illegal on Earth, and this is a United Earth ship. There's no such thing as a slave here, stolen or otherwise. Go pound sand. However, a couple of humans escaped from your ship with a pretty interesting story about being captured as slaves. It's illegal to keep humans as slaves. I demand an audit of their ship's manifest to prove that they were illegally attempting to enslave humans. Nijit shrieked even louder. Slavery is legal on Skrizit as it is legal here. My property is none of your business. He started to reach for Brev. In fact, I will start taking back my property now. Brev flinched away from him, and Rusty stepped forward. If you lay a finger or whatever the hell you call those things on my crew member, I will have you arrested for assault, attempted kidnapping, attempted trafficking in sapience, trespassing, and anything else I can think of. If you think you are leaving here with any slaves, you can fuck all the way off. Step inside the perimeter, and Earth law says that as captain of this ship, I am allowed to use force to prevent harm to a crew member. If you play a stupid game, you will win a stupid prize. Nijit retorted sarcastically, crew member? I think not. What is his job? Rusty pulled a flask out of a pocket on his jumpsuit, took a drink, then handed it to Brev. He gave Nijit a steady look, and replied, beverage server. The law enforcement official snickered at that. Nijit continued pressing. There is still the matter of my people who were kidnapped. I demand that their ship be searched so that my people can be returned, and that assault and kidnapping charges pressed against them. Rusty shrugged. We don't have bugs on the ship. We have very good pest control, and we don't even let them aboard. Nijit was about to start shrieking again when the lead law officer held up an appendage. He was a bulky creature that reminded Rusty of an elephant or rhino. The officer said slowly, while there does seem to be some legal conflict regarding slavery between Skrizit and Earth, kidnapping is an extremely straightforward matter with both worlds. As a neutral party, will you let my people inspect your ship for any Skrizit persons? If no Skrizits are found, this will be a matter for legal experts to handle. Rusty motioned to Grell and Gert, the Plorkant arachnid legal specialist, and they backed a few meters away from the perimeter. Rusty bent down and whispered to Grell, are you absolutely certain that there are no Skrizit aboard the ship whatsoever? Grell nodded. They went back to the perimeter edge, and Rusty told the law enforcement officer, your people are welcome to come aboard and search. He pointed at Nijit. But none of their kind are welcome here. And just to be clear, you are looking for Skrizits and only Skrizits. I want you to generate a warrant, specifying right here and now precisely what you're looking for. That's another thing we have on Earth, is a right to be searched only with a specific warrant. The law enforcement officer took out a datapad and typed into it. He read a definition of Earth warrants. He nodded. That will be acceptable, on the condition that our search will be video monitored. If there is any attempted interference with the search, then we will have the authority to come and search again. Also, as I read this, if I find any blatantly criminal activity or obvious contraband during my search, I am authorized to make arrests and bring charges. Rusty looked down at Gert, and she nodded. That will be acceptable. I shall assign my husbands to escort the law enforcement officers. While they aren't very bright, they are very good at tattling. Rusty snickered at this. He sent a message to the bridge that law enforcement officers were coming aboard to do a search. After the search was over, and no Skrizit had been found, although there were a few raised eyebrows at certain points, the law enforcement officers left the ship. Nijit was absolutely outraged, adamantly insisting that the raiding party had kidnapped their people and were holding them hostage. Rusty responded to their accusations with some colorful language involving hand gestures, accusations of inbreeding, and suggestions of anatomically impossible activities. 3 days later, Nagala was in transit and Vioon called a meeting in the dining area. The meeting had several crew members and rescued slaves plus the majority of the senior officers. The meeting was in the dining area, because the regular meeting room was unable to accommodate all of the attendees. Crew members and passengers of the Nagala, he began. We are here to discuss what will be the disposition of the persons aboard the ship. It has been said that some of you wish to seek employment here. We will accommodate as we are able, but Nagala does have limited resources for a crew. It will be necessary for several of you to depart, unless you have sufficient funds to stay on as passengers. There have been many separate discussions, but now it is time for us to come together and reach consensus regarding who will stay and in what capacity. Purg Walk waddled forward. I have talked with the otters on the ship, both crew and our new passengers. Numa and I wish to return to our home world, and we will host any who wish to come with us until they can be reunited with their families. I have spoken with Grell at length, and he is ready to take over as the information specialist. There was a lot of murmuring around the room, and Rusty was stunned. Purg had been his friend for years, and he felt like he had just gotten punched in the chest. As he looked at Purg, he noticed that the fur on Purg's nose and around his eyes had started to whiten. Numa also had some lighter fur on her face, and white hairs had started to appear in the coat around her body. It really hit home with Rusty. Otters had shorter natural lifespans than humans, and now Purg and Numa wanted to go home to retire. Rusty closed his eyes for a moment, then looked over to Vioon and waved. I second the motion. If Purg and Numa want to go home, I think Grell would do a great job as a replacement. He looked over at Purg and Numa. I'll miss you guys a lot. You deserve your retirement. Thanks for everything. Vioon spoke to the group. Do we have consensus regarding replacing Purg with Grell? Everyone around the room nodded. Vioon continued. Nagala, enable command function. Information specialist Purg being replaced by Grell. Confirm. After a few moments, Nagala's metallic feminine voice sounded throughout the room. Previous information specialist, Lemp, uninstalled. New information specialist, Grell, authorized and installed. Proper designation, Purg. Rusty rolled his eyes. Seriously, Nagala? We are doing this again? Nagala remained silent. Rusty looked over at Booley and Podra. Will you be staying or leaving? Podra responded, Booley will be leaving with our parents, but Brev and several other of the otters will be staying here. We will be training them to fill in for any of the crew who wish to leave. I will be staying on. My studies in medicine on Nagala are going quite well. I am receiving an excellent education in xenomedicine that simply would not be possible in a school back home. When we get to our next destinations, I have already been able to pick out curricula to acquire for study. Nagala's medical library will become quite extensive. This is a rare opportunity. Rusty smiled and breathed a huge sigh of relief. His time in the Marines had a share of horrors that haunted him still. He had tried using mental health services in Earth Force, but it didn't seem to do much good. However, he had found peace on Nagala with the otters, especially under Podra's care. While he certainly wouldn't have stopped Podra from leaving, he wasn't sure if he would have been able to stay without her there. Vioon looked disapprovingly at Rusty and a few of the other humans. Some crew are leaving because they believe humans are unsafe. I myself have found that humans can be volatile and unpredictable. However, they are also capable of extremely valuable contributions. Nagala will retain human crew members. If anyone does not find this acceptable, they are free to leave without censure of any kind. They will be given full severance pay and a positive referral to future employers. Does anyone wish to resign? A few hands and other appendages went up in the air. Grell took down the names. Thank you for your service to Nagala. I will be getting with each of you so that we can arrange for your replacement and departure. You will be pleased to note that our next few destinations are very routine and pleasant. We will accommodate you every way we can. Vioon turned to the table where the avian Menniks were seated. Do you wish to stay aboard Nagala, or will you return to your world? One of the Menniks spoke up and pointed to two of the others. We and our spouses desire to stay. I am a navigator. Finnar is a stellar cartographer. Zila is an accomplished astrologer. We have been studying your ship's navigation systems, routes, and star charts. The Menniks are absolutely unrivaled in these areas. We are supremely confident that as part of Nagala's crew, we will make stellar travel far more profitable and fortuitous. We have read the stars in the upcoming travel itineraries and have made improvements. We are ready to work immediately. Vioon looked over at the Denari, who were his current navigators. What is your opinion regarding the Menniks? One of the Denari stood, a seasoned creature named Coord. He pointed appendages at the other Denari navigators. A few of us do desire to return home to Dinara. We have been in space a long time, and miss waves crashing on the beach. There have been discussions among some of the Denari about returning home, but we have never been able to reach a consensus as to how this would be carried out. It seems that with the addition of the new crew members, the consensus can now be easily reached. Zila, the Menniks astrologer, spoke up. I have been casting horoscopes for crew members. Your rescue of us was not unexpected, because from what little information I was able to glean, all of us are coming to a major life juncture at the same point. However, the stars show it is time for many to depart. If those persons leave now, they will be quite fortunate. Any of those persons who should leave now, but do not, will suffer misfortune, and possibly spread misfortune to others. Any who wish, come to me and I can tell you what your current destiny is. Manj, the arachnid contracts and currency specialist, blurted out, do you happen to have a list with you of individuals that should leave as soon as possible? Especially those who never should have come aboard in the first place. Rusty groaned as his wife Sylvia stood up and retorted to Manj angrily, what's that supposed to mean? If you got something to say it to my face. Rusty pulled Sylvia down to her chair. Sylvia, leave it alone. We've got a lot to take care of right now, and you and Manj can scream it out later. Sylvia glared at him. Pathetic excuse of a husband you are. You're taking that filthy bug's side over mine, and I am your wife. Sylvia stood up. Do you like her so much? Fine. Go be one of her husbands and have her eat your head. It would serve you right. Sylvia stormed angrily out of the dining hall. There were a lot of uncomfortable stares, and Manj pointed at Sylvia's back, while looking at the Menniks Zila. Zila quietly wrote down a small note. Vioon made a noise like rocks being shaken in a can. Rusty guessed that it was the Denari equivalent of clearing your throat to get attention. Are there any others who have important issues that need to be discussed right away? A few did raise their hands or other appendages, with Vioon answering a few questions, and Grell promising to follow up later. After the meeting was over, Grell spoke to Rusty. All of this has been very scary and exciting, but I think things will turn out well. I am glad that you will be staying on here. Nagala is home for Podra and I, and neither of us can picture being here without you. Thank you for helping my people. Rusty smiled at him. I am going to miss your parents and Booley, but I'm happy for them at the same time. I'm glad you're staying too. Zila walked up to Rusty. Oxide Eyes, your mate, was she also born on Earth like you? Rusty shook his head. No, she was actually born on our colony on Mars, the next planet, in our solar system. Zila tapped on her data pad for a few minutes, then finally showed the result to Rusty. Rusty read it and sighed wearily. Yeah, I know. But we're married. I made a commitment. In a windowless office, a screen played a news report with a female journalist narrating. Investigations continue into a riot on the Skrizit ship, where a multi-species group assaulted the ship, allegedly to rescue slaves being held illegally. Skrizit authorities claim that all passengers on the ship were there legally under local laws. Due to conflicting reports and laws, this situation won't be fully resolved for some time. There were several Skrizit casualties, upwards of 40 injured raiders and alleged slaves from several species, and 5 dead humans. The dead humans have been identified as local criminals with extensive arrest records. More details as the story develops. Agent Smith turned to Bob. Just how the hell did you pull this off? And this isn't your style. Usually you're a lot more discreet. Gilbert Preston, Bob, removed his glasses and polished them with the hem of his shirt. I went to that bar to hire a couple local thugs. The other party was already in progress. They were drunk and full of piss, so there was no talking them down. My choices were make the best of it or scrub the mission. Luckily a few of those clowns actually weren't complete idiots. I'm curious about the leader. He called himself Rusty, but his alien crew kept calling him Oxide Eyes. He said he was at Blood River. Smith did a search and a dozen human faces popped up. Gilbert Bob selected one and Rusty's picture came up, along with an abstract of his military record and tidbits of more recent activities, including an accident on Space Station 6. Smith raised his eyebrows. You have the best dumb luck I've ever seen. If we were to recruit a guy for this kind of job, it would be him. Gilbert and Smith were both impressed by a video clip where Rusty was charging an armored vehicle from the side, landed on the roof, blew off the upper hatch, then assaulted and discarded insurgents who tried escaping the vehicle. Gilbert asked, "Why isn't this guy working for us?" Smith tapped the screen and Rusty's discharge came up. He pointed. He's a burnout. They tried retaining him, even offered a promotion. He just wants to be left alone, and it's better that way. He's in the system so we can keep an eye on him if we need to. Gilbert shook his head. Damn waste of talent. He tapped the screen and now a juvenile Skrizit appeared. At least he made my job easier. With all the mayhem on the rest of the ship, they had to pull several guards from her chamber, so she was a lot easier to get to. Since the others were busy trying to get to the slaves, it never occurred to the bugs that anyone would be trying to capture her. Smith crossed his arms and had a look of satisfaction. I still can't believe we actually managed to get our hands on a queen. Gilbert chuckled. She's a little young, more princess age. Smith thought for a moment, good idea. That will be her call sign. Gilbert and Smith continue to watch the screen. A thought occurred. Smith. I'm assuming you tied up loose ends. Gilbert nodded. Yeah, the 5 in the news report. They are the type that no one will miss. Just smash and grab amateurs. They were there looking for shit to steal while everyone else was rescuing slaves.